Good morning, good afternoon, and hello everybody. Welcome back to the channel. It's been a minute. I hope everyone here had a wonderful holidays with Christmas and New Year's. I had a great time spending it with friends and family and just relaxing overall, taking some time off. Things were definitely up and down for me as I was caught in one of the worst blizzards ever in recorded history across the East US. I was still able to see family on certain days, but overall that was something to get through for sure. But nonetheless, I just hope everyone here had a great holiday break for the last week or so. It is now 2023 and it is time for a new journey here on the channel, and what better way than to start with a video like this. Yes, I have finally done it. As many have told me that I should do, I have completed my first playthrough of the original Dead Space game from 2008. Let me just say right now, with full confidence and honesty, this game is awesome.
The future of our race ends here.
I played it while over the Christmas break and completed it in the span of a couple of days. I loved this experience playing this game for the first time. This game, after playing it all the way through, was truly ahead of its time, I believe. That's the best compliment I can give it. However, it wasn't a flawless experience considering I've seen so many people say that this is one of the best horror games of all time, but I do think there are some things I would have done differently and ended up as critiques of the game. Normally, I might talk about things I loved and like first, but this time around, let's start with those criticisms I had with the game. Starting with number one, that being the character of Isaac Clarke, specifically his voice, or lack of voice. There are times in video games where a silent protagonist works, specifically in games like RPGs, for example. I saw someone comment this on one of the breakdown videos for the Dead Space remake coming soon on how games like a Dark Souls or Dark Souls-esque type games don't need a talking main character, and I agree. I think in the old days, games leaned on silent main characters a lot. A big example of this is the Call of Duty franchise, of which didn't have a talking protagonist until Black Ops 3. Before that, each game had silence from the character you played as. With a character like Isaac Clarke, who does have much to him, having a voice I think would have done so much more for him. Not just from a story perspective and the fact that you play as him the whole game and he doesn't die in the end, but also the scenes of emotional damage or big surprise just fell flat, with me giving very little care about the impact of it all. The scene at the end of the game before the boss fight where Kendra tells Clarke the truth of Nicole and all you get is a hand to the face with no dialogue just feels awkward. I am hoping the remake fixes stuff like this because it can give more levity to the game and the character of Isaac. Another criticism of this game in particular, which very much does affect it based on the genre that it's in, is the lighting. The lighting in this game is all over the place. For a horror game that deals with you fighting off alien creatures, I have to be honest, the lighting really lessened the ability for me to actually be terrified and scared. In fairness, there were times where I did get jump scared and was terrified, although it was few and far between. There are so many environments in this game where you are in very lit areas, and it just loses every ounce of you being tense and on edge when fighting off the necromorphs. Again, I really do hope the remake fixes on this a little bit more, because while I imagine back in the day, when it first came out, it probably frightened people then, in today's modern time, for newer players, it probably won't have that same effect, which is why, if the remake is going to end up being the first time a new player plays this franchise, it has to be done to where it gives them that scare that maybe the original didn't, or couldn't. A third criticism I have actually has to do with the menu you use. Of course, when you open up the menu, there are 4 different sections, and one of them happens to be showing you a little mini-map of where you are. If I had to be as brutally honest with this as possible, I think this is one of the most useless things in the game. Not once did I ever use this map, especially considering there's already a function in the game that allows you and tells you where you are supposed to go to next. So if the point of the map is to show you where you are and where you should be going, it's already useless based off that other function. At the same time, because each chapter put you in an environment that is not as big as you think it is, it's not that hard to remember where you came from. I was able to put each level in my mind easily when remembering where to go. I will also say that the design of it in the menu, it's not confusing to look at, but it's just the overall design of it that makes it look a little convoluted in terms of its overall look. I think in a recent game like Jedi Fallen Order, for example, that game had a very similar looking minimap, although I think for that game it made a little bit more sense because of how much bigger that game is, and also the menu itself just looked a lot cleaner. Ultimately, from a design perspective, I think they should probably clean it up a little bit more in the remake. Now, the last thing I will say in terms of criticisms, and this one is a bit more of a minor one, and one that's not that big of a deal considering it does relate to certain playstyles, but I think the weapons themselves didn't do themselves any justice in terms of feeling like there was an equal amount of usage for each one. I don't think any of the weapons in this game are particularly awful, but I found that something like the flamethrower, for example, is pretty useless, and I didn't find myself using it at all. Again, I really do hope that the remake does a lot more to make it feel like each weapon can be utilized at any one point. Most of the weapons do have that usage to them, but there are also some that just felt like I could have used any of the other guns and have been better off, but again, this is just a minor criticism and based on personal preference. But now with all that being said, let's move all that aside and let me just say again, I love this game. There is so much with this game that I absolutely adore and really like, and I think the remake is ultimately going to improve upon a lot more. Everything from the violence, to the necromorph creatures themselves and their designs, the imagery, which in many scenes is depicted in horrifying ways, the ships, guns, and their designs, to even the messaging behind how the events take place in this game. Again, so much here just really showcases how this game really was ahead of its time. I think graphically as well, this game was definitely ahead of its time, even if it does look dated nowadays. I think graphically at that time, when this game came out in 2008, this to a lot of people probably looked like the future of video games. I mean, seriously, I think it still holds up, even though there are parts of it that, again, do look very dated. I also do love how there is a lot here to do in the game itself through the various 12 chapters that it takes you through. Admittedly, it's funny because a lot of people complained that a game like the Callisto Protocol felt very repetitive at times, but here in some cases it kind of does feel the same, although each new chapter does have you doing various different tasks to get to the objective of the end of the game, which is to fight the boss and get off the Ishimura, which is the ship of which you were on where the outbreak occurred. I will also say one thing I really loved that they did with the game that I did not notice until I looked hard enough was who the actor was that plays the character of Hammond. At first I was like, is this the dude that plays the one dude from the first original Resident Evil movie from 2002 that gets his entire body cut up from the laser grid? Come on! Shit. Got it. Well, it turns out it's not that guy. However, having looked it up, it's actually this guy.
Choose your next words carefully, Leonidas. They may be your last as king.
I mean, listen, this actor, Peter Mensah, is mainly known for that scene in the movie 300, but I've also seen him in other stuff that he's got a minor role in as well, but seeing him in this game was also very refreshing considering it is one of the first things he did after 300. The man went on to be in one of the most iconic scenes in film history, and then be in one of the most iconic horror video games ever in the span of 2 years, which is just really cool and a really awesome story. I think the game also has a very solid score for its music. It's not one of the greatest pieces of musical video game score I've ever heard, but it's still very solid. In terms of the runtime and the length of the game itself, I would say that this game is also fair for its runtime. I completed it in around 10.5 hours, which I believe, if I look up correctly, is around 30 minutes behind what has been said to be the normal runtime of 11 hours. Which I will also say, I find it incredibly hypocritical and hilarious that there are people out there who probably would say that Dead Space has a perfectly fine runtime, but will go after the Callisto Protocol and say that that game is too short when it's literally the same exact runtime. I mean, listen, I'm sorry, I just can't help but laugh at that. At the same time, having now played the game, there are many inspirations that the Callisto Protocol took from this original Dead Space. From some of the motivations of the villains to even the very last shot of each game. Of course, like the Callisto Protocol, Glenn Schofield was also one of the head guys who came up with this entire franchise, and I think to this day it is one of the best things that we as video gamers came to play. Of course, I didn't grow up with this franchise, I was too young at the time, but having now played it for the first time, I am really glad I made the decision, especially with the remake coming out here in less than a month. I'm sure eventually I will go back and also play Dead Space 2, and then finish up Dead Space 3, considering at one point I had started playing that game after getting it for backwards compatibility, but had reached a point where I just got stuck on something that clearly I made a mistake with, or the game just glitched out. With the remake also coming, I will definitely plan on playing that game as well because it just looks fantastic and potentially looks like it could very well one-up on that original game. So here's hoping, fingers crossed. I think that's ultimately going to end up doing it as well for this video, as those are pretty much my entire thoughts on this game. Again, I had a fun time with this, although I had my criticisms for it, I still think ultimately I can see why this game had such a lasting effect on people. Hopefully this new remake coming out also leaves that effect on newer players who might come to the game looking for a new franchise to get their hands on. And with that being said as well, I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments, especially considering in my very first Callisto Protocol video I made, I had so many people in my comment section tell me that I needed to check out this game, and I listened. For those who have played the game in the past, what were your thoughts on it when you originally played it for the first time? And do you think it still holds up today? And also, are you excited for the remake to revisit it? Is it also better than the second Dead Space game, which I hear this one goes back and forth with for which ones are the best, so it could make for an interesting conversation. If you could also please like the video if you enjoyed and subscribe to the channel if you are new, that would be greatly appreciated, everyone. I think this was a great way to start off the year of 2023 for videos, and so I am very much looking forward to doing more for you all. Again, I hope you all have a fantastic holidays and a great new year, and here's to 2023 for us all. Be safe, have a great start to your weeks, and this is Orion, and I'm signing out.